So let us start with the environment. So I know the time has come for the prelims. Those who are going to give this year, they can feel the heat, right? So this is one of the most important subject from prelims point of view. You all might be knowing there is nothing new as far as the issue with environment and science and tech is concerned, because both environment and science and tech are such subjects. The more you prepare, more you will get confused, right? And there are such topics in environment where what will happen? Let me first adjust this colors. Yeah, where what will happen? There is species topic, particularly these two topics, environmental organization and species. These topics are such topics where more pain and no gain is there. Okay. Why such scenario is there? I will show you the questions. Okay. Every year, in how many biosphere reserves are there? You all might have seen the atlas by now. How many biosphere reserves are there in India? 18 biosphere reserves. How many are under MAB list, Man and Biosphere list? Out of 18? 12 or 13? 13 are under MAB list. There are how many national parks? 100 plus, 106. How many wildlife sanctuaries? More than 500, right? Such is the scenario that every year out of this 100, in at least 20 national parks, in at least 100 wildlife sanctuaries, 1 or 2 new species are discovered. Such is the scenario, and they remain in news. And then the UPSC will ask you the scientific names of this. Okay. And sometimes by scientific names, you won't be able to comprehend that whether that particular species is avian species or amphibian species. The name looks like it is avian species, but it comes out as amphibian species. Such is the scenario. Then there are, in environment, one of the most important area is this IAS, invasive alien species. Okay. And every year from invasive alien species, they have asked the question. Now there was a trend prior to this. Let us first break the syllabus, that what all things we are going to cover as far as environment is concerned and what kind of question comes. So two things becomes important, species and environmental organization, but problem with this is these topics are less remunerative. The topic that is more remunerative is environmental legislation. There are 4 important legislation, and from this every year there are one or the other question. There are legislation like, the most important is Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. We'll cover this comprehensively. Why? Because recently there has been amendment in 2022, right? The schedules have been changed. Kerala has made rules regarding this particular Wildlife Protection Act, and every year or the other there has been questions like which all organizations are under Wildlife Protection Act, which all posts are under Wildlife Protection Act, how national parks and wildlife sanctuaries boundaries are being changed on the basis of Wildlife Protection Act. So this kind of act becomes important. Then second most important is Environmental Protection Act of 1986, and we have to cover this comprehensively as well, because again, which all body is there, and one favorite body which we have covered, I guess, in resources chapter, CGWA. You remember Central Groundwater Authority, when we were covering this groundwater, there also I told you that central, from this particular topic, in last 5 years 3 times question has been asked, CGWA. So it becomes important. Then, and as far as Environmental Protection Act is concerned, prior to this there were different acts, pollution related acts. For example, there was Water Pollution Act, there was Air Pollution Act. Under Air Pollution Act, noise pollution and light pollution were also added. So this becomes very, very important. 1986 Act of Environmental Protection Act. Then there is Biodiversity Act of 2002. This also becomes important because conservation of biodiversity is important, and we have, I think we already saw COP 16. We have discussed it briefly in geography class. COP 16 of CBD, Convention on Biological Diversity. You remember COP 16? Where was it held? COP 16 in 2024. Baku was UNFCCC COP 29. Yes? No, that was COP 30. Again UNFCCC. Belém, Brazil. Where was this held? CBD. And this Convention on Biological Diversity is important. From tribal communities point of view, it becomes very, very important because there has been one particular topic when we were discussing this population chapter also. We have discussed population, right? In geography? No? Yeah, we have discussed. I remember we have discussed the geography, and there we talked about PVTGs, right? PVTGs, particularly vulnerable tribal groups. If you see PVTGs, then they have asked questions related to PVTGs, and these tribal groups' role in conservation of biodiversity is very, very important. Role of indigenous community and tribal community is very, very important, and this integration happened in Cali, Colombia. This location is very, very important. Again, Cali, right? So COP 16, CCD, that is Convention to Combat Desertification, COP 16, that also becomes very important, and UNFCCC becomes very important. So these organizations we will cover under Biodiversity Act also. Particularly this CBD we will cover. So Biodiversity Act becomes very important. And then comes the FRA of 2006, that is Forest Rights Act. These four acts you should know comprehensively, because there are full chances of questions coming from these acts. So if you prepare these, there will be very high probability of at least doing one question, marking one question correct in the examination. So this is comparatively more remunerative topic, right? Then under this act only, under Wildlife Protection Act only, there are setting up of various protected area networks like National Park, Wildlife Sanctuary, then Community Reserve, Conservation Reserve. These four conservation areas known as Protected Area Networks, PAN. This is covered under Wildlife Protection Act. We will deal with this. Okay. So this becomes important. Now there was a time period prior to 2021. If you see the PYQ, how many of you have seen the PYQs of environment? Those who are going to give examination this year at least. Yes. How many of you have seen? No? Look, after 35 days, no, 35 days is also not left. 32. Countdown has already begun, right? After 32 days, there is going to be prelims. So at least for next 30 days, every day you should look at PYQs of whichever subject you are studying. Okay. Since you have not covered this environment, one thing, even if I am not going to teach you this, but look at the PYQs of 2025, up till 2025. Okay, last 10 years PYQs. This becomes very, very important. And when you will look at the PYQs, then you will realize that prior to 2022, there used to be question from either of the wildlife sanctuary or national park. So if someone is covering, if someone is preparing to give, let's say, prelims in 2023, and if that person has seen the PYQs of last 10 years, so what ideal scenario he will take? He will choose that he will cover those areas, right? Now there are more than, we have already written somewhere, right? More than 100 national parks, more than 100, yeah, we wrote this, more than 100 national parks and more than 500 wildlife sanctuary. So that person, ideally what he will do? At least he will cover or remember or memorize 50 national parks and at least 200 wildlife sanctuaries, and which river flows through this particular area, and which all species are important in this particular area, why it remains in news. All these things he should prepare, right? That person has done the whole preparation. Since 2023, there has been no question from this particular area. This is my story. I did this, but there was no question. But still, is it not important? Even if they are not asking question, it becomes important, because there is a high probability that on the basis of PYQs, on the basis of wildlife sanctuaries and national parks, their location, their overall geography, as well as the species that are found there, on the basis of that there can be questions. So that's why this is again very, very important. And the most important topic after this, again very high yielding topic, is pollution. Very high yielding topic. And pollution, again, air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, solid waste management, electronic waste management, plastic waste management, noise pollution, light pollution, all types of pollution becomes important, right? And how to deal with this pollution, that also becomes very important. And these two topics, environmental organization and pollution, is interlinked. Because what will happen when we will look into the environmental organizations like CBD, CCC, and CCD, when we look at all these organizations, that what all agenda were signed, what all protocols are there, everything needs to be covered as far as pollution is concerned, because they have asked question from pollution, that the organizations like National Action Plan for Climate Change, for example, if we take the India's initiative, then India's initiative become important, that what all inputs we are getting as far as dealing with the pollution is concerned, what all measures we are taking. For example, one of the measure we know that during the time period of monsoon, Rekha Gupta ji asked for the artificial rainfall in Delhi. That was a measure to deal with the pollution, right? Artificial rainfall to deal with the air pollution. Only thing was timing was not good, right? So all those things need to be covered. We will talk about the precipitators. We will talk about the, from science and tech perspective also, you might have covered this, right? This part, pollution part, little bit, not yet. Okay. So we will try to cover this, because this becomes important. And under this also, again, if we integrate this topic, this invasive alien species is topic of species also, it is linked to pollution also. Because if algal bloom is happening, that is happening because of pollution, water pollution, right? Because of the excessive nutrient in the water body, that is happening. So that is a form of pollution. We need to talk about those things. Okay. So overall, if you see environment, if you see from biology perspective, let's say, now what sources you should read right now before the examination? First of all, again, I don't know how many of you have read NCERT and how many of you are revising NCERT, because in the market, I think NCERT related courses are, NCERT related material is not available. Lots of things are available except for the basic things from where questions have been asked in the past. So if you have to read NCERT from biology perspective, there is a class 12th NCERT of biology, in which the last 4 chapters are linked to environment. These 4 chapters become important from biology also, biotechnology point of view also, environment point of view also. This last 4 chapter becomes very, very important. Then in chemistry, there is class 11th NCERT, there is chapter, class 11th and class 12th both, there is chapter related to pollution. This is required. Now let me ask one thing. You remember when we were doing minerals, I asked you to read e-coffee table book. You remember, from Ministry of Mines? How many of you have at least looked at those reports? How was it? Do you remember any example? What initiative have been taken in which district, which mining district, which body was involved? Just tell me the name of the body. Which was the authority that was looking at those programs, particular programs, initiatives in mining district? And minerals is again very, very important area. I have told you that in prelims, we are focusing right now on prelims. All these things are important from mains point of view as well, right? But from prelims point of view, there is very high probability. So Ministry of Mines, what was the name of the scheme? If I tell you the short form, will you be able to tell me the full form? PMKKY. There is no Krishi. Khanij Kshetra Kalyan, yes. So Pradhan Mantri Khanij Kshetra Kalyan Yojana is the name of the scheme. So at least you remember something. Which body was there in district? In district, which body was there? One of the most important body under this only, DMF was there, right? District Mineral Foundation. This body becomes very, very important again. Again, this is in news, continuously in news. DMF is in news. Why? Because of the upkeep of the areas that are being basically polluted or devastated because of mining. Okay. So from that point of view, e-coffee table booklet was important. I have told you, you might have written in the side margin as well. From environment point of view also, few of the reports, executive summary becomes important. Reports like India State of Forest Report, ISFR 2025. Very important. We have to look at and this executive summary, if you see, this itself is very, very important. 2-page executive summary is there. Directly you can read from the report rather than reading from any material. This executive summary is 2-page summary. Okay. Otherwise, the report is in 4 volume. But for us, it is important. Why? Because which state has seen rise in afforestation or rise in forest cover and tree cover? Which state has seen fall in forest cover and tree cover? What is the state of mangroves? What is the state of different types of forest? For example, there are very dense forests, moderately dense forest, open forest, scrub lands. We have to look at all these definitions, then what all initiatives are being taken, which type of satellites are being used, which types of spectrographical lens are being used. All these things becomes important from executive summary only. And this is written in executive summary only. So this is again an important area. And then you can read, if you have time and energy, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, MOEF CCC, annual report. Again, summary is given in this annual report and the first chapter as well. Just have a brief look at that. Okay. Apart from that, whatever current affairs you are following, you know that if 15 to 20 questions will be there from environment, at least 15 questions are coming from environment, right? 50% of these 15 to 20 questions will be linked to current affairs. 100%, more than 50% of the question will be linked to current affairs. So that's why it becomes very, very important. Now let us look at the questions. Which type of questions you would like to see first? Environmental organizations or species? Species. Let us look at the species question. Nature of the question is important. Okay. Now in 2020, comparatively simple question was there with reference to India's biodiversity. What are these? Frogmouth, coppersmith, barbet, this miniate, white-throated redstart. This kind of questions were comparatively simpler question. Okay. At that period of time. Usually these are the common names, and these names, if you are reading newspaper thoroughly, these names you might see, right? So these are the bird species, avian species. So earlier this type of question was there. Similarly, if you walk through countryside, look in 2014, the type of question was comparatively good. In the examination hall only, they were wanting you to walk through countryside. You are likely to see some birds stalking alongside the cattle to seize the insects, disturbed by their movement through grasses, which all things you will see. Such was the scenario. Okay, this was comparatively easier question. Then again, Great Indian Hornbill related question was there. Where can you find the Great Indian Hornbill? This was the question. Then again, different, this Mahasir, if you see, several times golden Mahasir and blue-finned Mahasir question has been asked. Okay, so in 2019 they asked where can we find this type of fish species. Then these kind of species, the nitrogen fixing plants species, they have been asked. Why? Because tell me, is biofuels done? Biofuels part in science and tech? Yes? No? Have you all covered biofuels from current affairs? Because this is again very, very important area. And recently when shortage was happening, people were talking about two things. One was government was talking about piped natural gas and biofuels, availability of biofuels. And from this perspective, again, it becomes very, very important. Why? Because we have to talk about different types of fuels, different category of fuels. There are 4 categories of fuels, biofuels, right? Out of this, genetically modified organism, GMO based crops, biofuels are also available, the 3rd category, right? Under this, several grasses are being utilized for category 2 biofuel. So this is very, very important area. You have to look at this nitrogen fixing plants from biofuel perspective as well. The question was there from this particularly nitrogen fixation plant criteria. Why? Because we will also talk about, tomorrow we will talk about this thing as well, biogeochemical cycle. And this you all have read in your school. Different types of cycle. Water cycle you have read, carbon cycle you have read. How many of you have read nitrogen cycle in school? You have read but you don't remember. Don't tell me that you have not read. Even those who had science till class 10, they have read this nitrogen cycle. There is a possibility that phosphorus and sulfur cycle were not taught. Otherwise, these 3 cycles were there, right? And from nitrogen cycle, there has been lots of questions. Let us look at the questions. Again, these type of question in 2021, this question was there that look at the different types of organisms. How many of them are primary producers? We'll talk about the food chain and food web. And since I think class 2-3 we are studying about food chain, right? So those who say that usually UPSC asks question related to class 10 up to class 10th only, you can read it from the NCERT. That is true actually. That primary producer, secondary producer, then consumer category, then decomposer category, then apex predator, all these things we have read in the school itself. Only thing is we have to look at these organisms, that which are which organism. And if you start solving this PYQ, suppose as of now you don't know about these, okay, you might have heard about cyanobacteria. If you do not have the, how many of you had biology background in 11th 12th? Yeah, so they might know. There is a possibility that how many of this is primary producer. Those who are not from biology background, they might not know. If you don't know what to do, then look at the PYQs and look at the images of this. Just type this name in the Google. Whatever has been asked, you should have a gist of that, and you should have a pictorial scenario as far as these organisms are concerned. Once you start looking at the pictures, when this question will come on, or when these things will come in the, let us check in one of the, for example, I have the image of these as well, where we can find all these things. Again, these things were asked in, how many of them are detritivores, how many of them are filter feeder. These are all in 2021, there were 4-5 questions related to species, right? Then, again in 2021, symbiotic relationship, we will talk about different types of relationships. So how many of them are having symbiotic relationship? That becomes very, very important. Then these types of things we have already seen. right? In different types of vegetation. We have talked about vegetation, soil. There we have seen these things. Then species, lion species. Do you think lion is important in 2025? Lion is always important, king of the jungle. Why it is important in 2025-26? Yes. What happened in 2025-26? Yeah, in Gujarat also they located in apart from Gir also, lion had been spotted in Bagh Wildlife Sanctuary, and in Madhya Pradesh region also they found this. But if we talk about the habitat, then the only habitat declared habitat so far is Gir National Park. Last year there was lion census in 2025. This happens every 5 years. So under this census, don't you think that a PYQ can be formed on the basis of PYQ and on the basis of current affairs? There is a possibility of a question on lion again, right? So that's how we need to cover things. That's how we need to look at the current affairs. That is there a possibility of that current affairs being asked in the examination? Which current affairs will become important? That has been already asked in the examination, right? So in 2019, it was already there. So there is a huge possibility of question from this area. These type of question used to be there, simple questions. Now you can see this, you can find this type of question on the basis of elimination easy. Some species, some species, some species, some species. And you know, when there is no absoluteness, then all these statements can be correct, right? But now UPSC also knows this. So they don't ask this type of statements. This was there in 2019. So solving environment question in 2019 was comparatively easier if you see the previous year's question. But if you see the 2020, again 2019 Himalayan nettle. Now this species, even if you read a 500-page book on the basis of a species, you might not find this species, Himalayan nettle, right? But this question was there, that where this species can be used on the basis of current affairs. So that's why this region is this area, species is painful area, because lot is to be covered. Whatever thing is there in news can be asked. And you all might have watched the stand-up of Basi related to UPSC preparation. There is a stand-up comedian Basi, right? Those who have seen, they might know. His first attempt was in 2016. My first attempt was also 2016, right? And he talked about two particular species which was there in 2016 question. I think it might be there in this PPT as well. It must be there. Let me show you. One was this, 2016 I have not, I think, this is there. Kharai camel. He has talked extensively in his stand-up related to Kharai camel, that where can we find Kharai camel? Have you heard of this camel? How many of you have heard of this camel, Kharai camel? Rest of you? Haven't you heard of this? This is such a camel which can swim in the water. Otherwise, camels are found in desert region, right? This can swim in water. This eats mangrove. This is in news because of bunny grassland. Again, this becomes very important from PYQ perspective and current affairs perspective. And this bunny grassland region in Saurashtra, in Gujarat region, is kind of threatened. Okay, because of the economic activity, because of the anthropogenic activity, this is threatened. So don't you think this will become important from exam perspective? Kharai camel. There was another banana related. Look. Usually this camel should be found in deserts. They are swimming in waters, right? So there is huge probability as far as environmental species are concerned. This banana question. Imagine in your first attempt getting a question like this, right? Recently our scientists have discovered a new and distinct species of banana plant. Right? Very good. 11 meters high, orange colored fruit pulp. How can you imagine these things? When you have seen banana tree, banana plant, which is not more than 3 meters high. Now in the examination hall, you will only think about the height of that particular tree. Where can we find that? Now I can know that where is a probability of finding that. But in first attempt, it was difficult for me, right? It was all tukka, fluke, right? So this was the scenario. Now I know that it can be found in Andaman Island. Then dugong, and I think we have talked about this Gulf of Mannar. We have talked, right? Gulf of Mannar. What is the significance of Gulf of Mannar from environment perspective? Only marine biosphere reserve. Only marine biosphere reserve out of the 18 marine biosphere reserve, and in that the sea mammal is found, which is herbivorous. This is known as sea cow, right? Dugong. So this becomes very, very important. Entire coast of India? No, not in entire. Look, this kind of elimination based question were there earlier. Now it is not there, right? That if you eliminate this, you can eliminate these two. Now you know that this is herbivorous marine animal. So 1 is already an answer. Even if you don't know about 3, you can reach to the answer C, 1 and 3. Now what UPSC will do? Only 1, only 2, only 3, only 4. And those who don't know about dugong, what they will do? Jai Mata Di. Let's rock, right? This will happen. So these things, that's why we need to have a look in as far as different species are concerned. Don't overemphasize on this. Why I am telling you is, as far as the species question are concerned, look, this is the herbivorous animal, dugong. Like this, you should see the images only. Once you have seen the images, once you know the location, there is a possibility that you might be able to do the elimination. From that perspective, it becomes important. Okay. Otherwise, if you invest more time on a species, then it will be difficult. And this advice was given to us, I think, by Jojo sir only in some of the class. During our class, he said that one of his friend was giving. He was also sharing his experience during our class. Okay. So he was saying that one of his friend and he, when they gave the examination, I think it was their second attempt, there was a question related to snake. And that was the time period. Jojo sir used to give the examination in 94, 96 time period, I guess. Yeah. At that time, even telephone was not there, hardly there, right? Forget about internet. The mode of preparation was solely books and newspaper. That's why this library culture was very, very important at that period of time. So what his friend did was, after he wrongly attempted that question, he came from the examination hall, he bought a book on snake book, such that if any question will be there next year, he will rock. There was no question related to this. So that's why, as far as this particular topic is concerned, we have to deal with this topic in such a manner that we can have brief idea. Where to invest more? In environmental legislation. Very high yielding area. Pollution, very high yielding area. Again, if you see questions related to second type of questions, the painful area, the second painful area is this environmental organization. Again, there is no end to environmental organization question because there can be multiple organizations. Let me tell you. For example, if you see this organization particularly, BMC, this anyhow we will cover, BMC we will cover. Under Biodiversity Management Act, we will cover this BMC, right? So this becomes important. Nagoya Protocol also we will cover. So this becomes important. This question is doable so far. Invasive species specialist group, doable because anyhow we have to cover IAS. But here look at these species. Now it becomes confusing that whether it is part of IUCN, whether it is part of UNEP, whether it is part of WWF, whether it is part of World Commission for Environment and Development, all seems probable. So you have to know more about this, that it was part of IUCN, right? So again, deeper you need to go as far as this particular. Now this UNOPS, Sustainable Investments in Infrastructure and Innovation, S3I initiative. These kind of organizations, there are more than 100 organizations like this. Under UN only, there are 6 principal organs. Under those 6 principal organs, there are at least 20-30 organizations. So these type of question you need to attempt on the basis of guess as far as environmental organization is concerned, because there is a limit to it, right? There are 2 probabilities. Either you all might have been religiously reading the newspapers since last 12 months, not missed even a single day. Religious reading, I am saying. How many of you have done that? Same is the scenario with me also, right? There are days when I miss newspaper, but I know people who religiously read newspaper on daily basis, whatever be the condition. Okay. So if you are reading news for the last 12 months religiously, 2-3 newspaper, there is a probability that you might come across this S3I initiative. Otherwise, hardly you will read about this. The flying camel also? No, swimming camel. Yeah, Kharai camel was swimming camel, Gaurav. Okay. Now I saw your comment. So this is the condition. Okay. Now if you see, further if you see the questions related to environmental organization, this climate action tracker. Let me just show you the type of things that has been asked. Capital Development Fund, right? Arbor Day Foundation, Tree City of the World, Climate Smart Agriculture, doable, but these kind of organization we have, I think, already covered. CGIAR, right? Have we covered this? Consultative Group on International Agricultural Research? No? This type of organization. ICRISAT, you all might have seen recently there was a news related to NAVIC. You know what is NAVIC? What is NAVIC? Satellite system. That is the navigation satellite system, IRNSS, right? When IRNSS was in news, this ICRISAT was also in news because of this. And why IRNSS was in news? This part is covered in Science and Tech? No. Okay. Why this was in news? And you all might have seen this Artemis also. Artemis 2 mission, right? How many of you have covered this Artemis 2 mission thoroughly through newspaper? This becomes very, very important. There is a probability that if they will not ask question related. Now, when you are covering Artemis, what else you need to cover? You need to cover you need to cover Chandrayaan 3 as well. You need to cover different missions of China, Russia, whatever moon mission are there. You need to cover all these things, right? Because then they can ask question. And during Artemis 2 and USA-Iran conflict, GPS was in news, China's Baidu was in news, and IRNSS was in news. Why this was in news during USA-Iran? Yes, during this conflict, nothing will happen, don't worry. Why this was in news? The access to its satellite system, right? That's why it was in news. That's how Iran was able to pinpoint the location that where to target, because GPS, and if you see Baidu again, which is the largest navigation system having the maximum satellites, maximum number of satellite, which do you think is the largest? If you have to take a guess, how many satellites are there in IRNSS? In NAVIC, it is a constellation of 7 satellites, right? IRNSS is a constellation of 7 satellites, out of which 4 should be in GEO, geostationary orbit, geostationary Earth orbit, and 3 should be in GSO, that is geosynchronous orbit. So, and out of this, 4 should be functional. So this is, oh, sorry, this is 3, this is 4, right? and 4 out of 7 at any given point of time, 4 should be functional. Such is the scenario. GPS is a constellation of 24 satellite, and this Beidou is a constellation of 42 satellite, functional satellites. Okay, so one of the strongest satellite system is of China. This becomes very, very important. And why I am covering this? Because it is again linked to environment, again linked to ICRISAT. So that's how you need to link these things. Then New York Declaration on Forest, again it is linked to one of the organization, one of the protocol. So lots of organization. Ramsar Convention, anyhow we are going to deal with Ramsar Convention, the wetlands, this becomes important. But earlier, when we used to do the preparation prior to 2023, initially there were around 10 wetlands which were significant from Ramsar Convention point of view. By 2023 it became almost 20, and then on 15th of August 2023 Prime Minister decided that since 2023 was the 75th, no, 2024, on the occasion of 75th year of independence, we will have 75 additional Ramsar sites. So this number went on increasing. At present it has reached around 85, more than 85. So when such number of Ramsar Convention are there, hardly you can prepare for this, right? But one of the most important Ramsar sites we have to cover. Why we have to cover? For example, Loktak Lake. Several times this has been asked in the examination. So from location point of view, Loktak Lake is important. How many of you are from Manipur? Recently, on 6th of April, I was there in Loktak Lake. Okay. And then on 7th of April, you know, this bombing happened. Right? And the issue is volatile as far as this particular area is concerned. Very high probability of question. Again, there is a very high probability as far as Loktak Lake is concerned. So these type of things, because again this is in Bishnupur district only, right? So this becomes very, very important. You have to look at these things. Then this organization, look at the organizations IPCC, WMO, UNEP, UNFCCC Secretariat. Repetition is happening, but the type of question is comparatively tough. CCAC, again this organization, then, and several times they have asked question from organizations. So earlier they asked question related to Cartagena Protocol, Nagoya Protocol, Kyoto Protocol, what all things are there in this protocol. This becomes again important, right? So we'll talk about the organizations also, but there is no limit to this. We will limit the organizations on the basis of the current affairs and on the basis of PYQs. Okay. And what probability is there of new questions from the organization, that we will try to look. But more focus should be on those topics which can be handled in a better way. Right. So if I have to tell again, if I have to emphasize again, then you should look at these topics thoroughly. Pollution, environmental legislation, these two topics particularly, right? And food chain related, these types of questions we will talk. So these are high yielding area. These things you should cover on the basis of PYQs. These are PYQ based topics. Okay. These are PYQ based topic. PYQ plus current affairs. Not more than that. Don't overdo it. Okay. So now let us start with the first topic as far as environment is concerned. And you all have read this in the, is this visible? B, there is some answer to which question I don't know, Jamirul, right? Now let's see. And you all know about this, the definition of, you know the difference between environment, ecosystem, biome, biosphere, then ecology. You all know the difference. What is the difference? What we do is we interchangeably use this. The environment is in the class is not good. The environment in the working space is not good. Which environment? Air, water, soil, relationship, we don't know, right? So we use it interchangeably, usually. This is a common scenario. And you remember the definition of system? I think we have discussed the definition of system initially. I told you one definition that you should remember. Have I told you the system's definition? I think I have told you in this class only. No? This is very, very important, and by this system definition only you will be able to understand different types of system, whether it be political system, whether it be economic system, whether it be computer system, ecosystem, whatever system is there, you can deal with this system. So in geography optional there is a particular definition for system in system analysis, that is, and write this in the first page itself in environment: regularly interacting and interdependent set of components forming a functional unified whole. Forming a functional unified whole. This definition you should remember like the most important definition. You should remember it like mantra. Why it is important? Each and every word is important. Look, as far as interaction is concerned, interaction we already know. If in the class, for example, interaction should happen. One-sided bhashan that I am giving right now and you people are not interacting, I am feeling that something is missing, right? I will feel something is missing. At least in the name of interaction, you should at least smile or frown. Your choice depending upon what I am saying, right? That is an interaction. The comments that are coming, that is an interaction. So interaction is important. Regular interaction should happen in a system. Same, there should be interdependence. There should be different types of AC. Yeah, it is again very, very important. We will talk about AC as far as global warming and positive feedback loop is concerned. Okay, and particularly here it is very, very much needed, right? So interdependence is important. As far as different species, different unit is concerned, they should be interdependent. Then this should form a set of components. You understood this? But the most important aspect regarding this is functional unified whole. It should be functional. For example, if we talk about this online system through which we are taking classes, right? There is this writing pad, there is this laptop, then projector is there, this screen is there in which comments are coming, this projector is there, this screen is there, lots of things are there, right? But if there is no electricity, will it be functional? No. So functionality becomes very, very important. Same is the case with ecosystem. On the basis of ecosystem, we will see the functionality of different species, that what are their role in that, in particular food chain, in particular biome, in particular ecosystem, how they define their area, how they form the habitat, how they form the ecological niche. This becomes very, very important. It is all based upon the functionality. An ecosystem, if it is dead, for example, Yamuna. Why we say Yamuna is dead? Because it is losing its functionality. The role of the river is not being fulfilled by Yamuna, particularly in this stretch, right? And as far as water is concerned, you know the status of water in Delhi. More uranium, right? More uranium than the nuclear power plant in India can be found in Delhi's water. This is the scenario. Can be found in Yamana's water. What is happening? Functionality is being lost. So functional aspect becomes very, very important whenever we talk about system. So this thing determines the ecosystem as well, that there should be functionality on the basis of various set of components. There should be biotic factors, there should be abiotic factors, there should be edaphic factors, there should be environmental factors, right? The role of climate in terms of precipitation, temperature, humidity becomes important. Suppose suddenly the temperature of this class reaches to 50 degrees Celsius without AC. Even I will leave. Forget about you. I will also leave, right? So 50 degrees Celsius because it is unbearable. After that, our system will not work, right? So temperature, important factor. Suddenly if rainfall happens, there is going to be an issue. Yesterday only in Guwahati, I think torrential rainfall happened, right? In Assam. Now, how many of you have seen this news? And those who have stopped reading newspaper because of prelims, I know this used to be a thing in our days also. We used to ask this type of silly questions in the class to our faculties. Some of them responded in a positive manner. Some of them used to scold us. That is there any logic to this? Still we used to ask, sir, kab tak newspaper padhe? This used to be the question. Since when we should read the newspaper? What date? If prelims is on 25th of May, what are the chances of questions from newspaper from 15th of May? And these questions are being asked by those students who have not read the newspaper since January 15th. Okay. So no logic is there. So this is not important. Otherwise, if you see, yesterday only there was flood, okay, in Assam, again because of the torrential rainfall, because of one of the pre-monsoonal shower. I think we have discussed the showers, right? Pre-monsoonal showers. Which pre-monsoonal shower happened in Assam? What is the name? Nor'wester. Nor'wester is there. Kal Baisakhi is the name. You know all the things that we have discussed at least. Have you revised your notes? That is important because most of the notes are based upon the PYQs. So it's better that you should do the revision. For example, I think we covered the, again, prior to going forward, let us see what we have discussed. You remember this place? In what context we studied this? Pachprad. How many of you remember? I only took this Indian geography class, right? In what context we studied this? Anybody? Let me give you another hint. Anybody? Another hint. Online also, and I know lots of you have attended the class. Yes, anybody knows what are these? What are these? Now you will know. And this was not there in the PYQ. What is Sambar Lake? Saline Lake. All of them are salt pans. And this was there in the question PYQ. Okay. And this Pachprad was in news 2 days back because of the blast that has happened. So Pachprad, Sargol, Khatu, Didwana, Digana, right? Kuchman, all this becomes important. And since it was in news, this again becomes important. Pachprad particularly. Why? Because again we have talked about Badmed. That Badmed has oil, onshore oil. Similarly, this one of the largest oil refinery was to be inaugurated by Prime Minister Modi yesterday. And day before yesterday, this bomb blast, not bomb blast, there was a blast in this refinery. So inauguration was postponed. So this is linked to current affairs as well. This is linked to PYQ as well. This is how we have to find the link. That is there any probability of asking question from this area, right? That's why it becomes very, very important. This yes, sir, I think is the answer related to the refinery caught fire. Yes, correct, Gaurav. So that's why it is important. So it is important from both saline lakes point of view as well as the refinery point of view, right? So that's how we need to look at the things. First thing that we are discussing is the environment. So environment is nothing but the set of living things and non-living things. In living things, there can be flora, fauna, microorganisms, all of them are there. That is one set of components. In non-living things, air, water, right, climate, the edific factor, soil is there, rainfall, temperature, humidity, whatever you want to say, all these things. So set of non-living things, set of living things, they are interacting, interaction is happening, and this is forming a functionally unified whole. That is to be considered as environment. Okay, so write the definition of environment. It is defined as the sum total of, and you will feel we all know about the definition. There is no need for this kind of definition. But when it comes to answer writing, you know, it becomes very, very important. So write down the definition. Environment is defined as the sum total of living, non-living and non-living components, influences and events. Write this as well. Influences and events surrounding an organism. Surrounding an organism. That is to be considered as the environment. So it is a comparatively bigger subset. Okay. This is a big subset as far as environment is concerned. Ecology, if we say, whenever logy is there, we know that it is the study of something. So the study of ecosystem will be considered as ecology. Okay. Write down the study of interactions between living organisms and their biotic and abiotic environments is ecology. Okay. So this is ecology. And in ecology, if we say, we have to talk about different things in ecology. That is, what is the level of ecological organizations? Okay. If we talk about particularly levels, then it start with organism or it start with individual. In terms of ecological study, it start with individual. Group of individual will form what? This will form population. Group of population will form what? This will form community, right? And group of community will form what? What will be formed? This will form biome, comparatively bigger aspect, right? Group of biome might form the whole biosphere. If we have to see the biggest subset, then that is biosphere. How? Because what is biosphere? Biosphere is nothing but the interaction of atmosphere, lithosphere, and hydrosphere, and a fine region where all this interaction is happening is biosphere. And those who have seen the videos of Artemis 2 mission, the various astronauts, they send the images, right? And if you have seen those images, how volatile the Earth's biosphere looks. Very fine atmosphere is there, on the basis of which there is life, right? So it is very, very volatile region. So that's why biosphere is significant. Then prior to individual, if we say, in terms of biology. This is biological aspect. Again, how an individual is formed on the basis of several organs. How organs are formed? On the basis of several tissues. How tissues are formed? Cells. How cells are formed? Nucleotides. Like this, you can go on, right? You can break the things. So this particular level becomes important as far as ecosystem based study is concerned. The problem is this: when ecosystem is deteriorating, where do you want to line below definition of ecology? Yeah, don't copy that because it is nothing but the extension of the definition of ecology as well. Because if you see this definition part, that's why I didn't repeat it. It is nothing but the study of the relationship of plants and animals to their physical and biological environment. Whatever you have read earlier, whatever you have written, this is nothing but the further simplification of that particular statement. Okay, that's why I didn't ask you to repeat it. This is for the simpler explanation. Okay, we will write only the important aspect, because we don't have to make our notes hefty. Notes should be utilized in the event of mains examination, and the more micro notes will be there, more utilization will be there. If you make, let's say, 300-page notes for environment or 500-page from newspaper cutting, and overall 200-300-page for each subject, do you think you will be able to revise it in mains? Not at all. Not at all possible, because further skimming is required after prelims. Once prelims is over, you have to skim your notes. That is, if your, let's say, one subject notes is of 100 page, you have to compress it into at least 20 pages in the first read. Further compression in next read, 10 pages. Further compression in next read, 5 pages, the most important thing. And this is one of the most toughest job. And how this is going to happen? The more you read, the more you solve questions, the more you write answers. On this basis, you are going to compress your notes. This 5 pages will become handy on the event of mains examination. This 100 pages for each subject. In one GS paper, there are 3-4 subjects. Do you think you will be able to revise 400 pages in 4 hours? 4 hours times is also not there in between 2 paper. Not at all. But 20 pages can be revised from 4 subject point of view, right? So that's why it is micro notes becomes very, very important. And this you cannot buy from the market also, although it is available. But that won't be helpful. More you do this process, more helpful it will become. Toppers notes, you should only take the inspiration from toppers notes. Should not copy those notes. Suppose you buy a book on quotations. How many of you have bought book of quotations? Anybody for essay? How many of you have at least tried to read? Right? Until and unless you write those quotations, you revise those quotations again and again, that won't be useful in the essay examination. Similar is the case with this PPT. I'll provide you everything. All these PPTs, 60 pages PPT. You won't even look at that PPT. Right? And lots of good images are there. For example, this cockroach image is there. You will feel what is the importance of cockroach. Important is species. Right? From a species perspective. Very, very important. So that's why we have to talk about this. So write about the levels of ecological organization. Or draw like this: individual, population, community, ecosystem or biome, usually interchanged, and then biosphere, the largest one. And we have seen where can we form the biosphere? Where interaction of atmosphere, hydrosphere and lithosphere is happening. So where life is possible, that is termed as biosphere. So first draw this: individual, population, community, ecosystem and biosphere, the different levels of organizations. And again, no need to define this organism, what is population, right? What is community? It is nothing but the grouping of different. Is it visible? Whatever is written, is it visible? Because I think it is becoming slightly dark. I don't know whether it is visible in online or not. Images are good, but these, whatever is written. Okay then. So this level of ecological organization is there. Okay, is it done? Then write this system of this definition of ecosystem, because this definition was given by Arthur Tensley in 1935. So write like this. Arthur Tensley, T-N-S-L-E-Y, Arthur Tensley in 1935 defined ecosystem as structural and functional unit of biosphere consisting of community of living beings and the physical environment comma, both interacting and exchanging materials between them. Interacting and exchanging materials between them. And as far as functional unit is concerned, we will talk about different functional unit, but prior to this, if we have to define the environment, we already saw that environment and ecosystem is made up of what? Biotic and abiotic factors, right? So like this we can do the subdivision, and you know that what is the importance of this biotic and abiotic factors. We have, particularly if we, let's say, talk about abiotic factor first. This abiotic factor can be further subdivided into climatic and edaphic factor, and this we have covered already in geography. In climatology, role of temperature, rainfall, humidity, pressure, all of these are nothing but the climatic factor. Do you think, for example, you all know that this year is going to be, yes, Super El Nino year? Super El Nino, they have defined it, because when we were looking into El Nino, we have discussed El Nino, right, in geography class. When we were discussing into El Nino, at that time there was hardly any possibility of El Nino. We discussed this in, I guess, February, around February, right? So at that time hardly any possibility was there. In March this possibility increased, and by the end of March, IMD said that we have to look at the temperature and pressure of different region, and then we will determine that whether there is going to be an El Nino year or not. And why this thing is happening? Because 2 years back only there was El Nino. In 2024 there was El Nino, right? 2 years back. So, and we have seen the periodicity of El Nino. Usually it happens in 5 to 6 years, right? This is the periodicity, but again this is happening in 2026. So this becomes very, very important, this El Nino year, and how this is going to impact the agriculture, economy, Indian monsoon. On the basis of Indian monsoon, lots of droughts, floods, everything is going to happen. Where floods is mostly drought will happen, agricultural drought and meteorological drought is going to happen, and then there is a possibility of flood as well. So all these things, don't you think, will again become important? Then from resources point of view or mineral geography point of view, we have already discussed the edaphic factors, that the minerals becomes important, soils become important. These are nothing but the abiotic factor. Topography becomes important, that it is the topography that determines which type of species can be found. For example, if you see again 1 week back, not even 1 week, 4-5 days back, this was in news. This is a species. You know what is this? Himalayan griffon. Anybody knows? 25 of them died. These are vulture species. 25 of them died in Dudhwa National Park. You know where is Dudhwa? Dudhwa Wildlife Sanctuary. It is there in UP. So in UP, dog poison, yes, because of dog poison. So they died. This automatically becomes important. Vulture species become important. And vulture, if we see, we have to talk about the Indian gyps vulture, we have to talk about the Himalayan griffon, their role in the organization, different types of species if we have to see, different types of consumers if we have to see. For example, when we talk about, so from topography point of view also they become important. From biotic factor also they become important, because here we have to talk about the primary producer, or simply we can write this: producer, consumer, and decomposers. Producers, consumers, and decomposers. And if you feel that very sad incident, it is a protected species, yeah, usually it is of least concern. Okay, gyps vulture is protected. Okay, this is near threatened, Himalayan griffon, but again it becomes very, very important. This vulture, their role in the ecosystem becomes very, very important. Okay, so if you see this, do you think there can be any end to reading the producer species, consumer species, and decomposer species? Because this itself is an optional. Botany, zoology, what are these? On nothing but the basis of these species are this. Producers, if we say, primary producers, secondary producers, right? Different types of producers, microorganisms, all this becomes very, very important. Same is the case with consumers, whether it is a primary consumer, whether it is a secondary consumer, whether it is an apex consumer. Then decomposers, which type of scavenging species is there, which kind of parasite is there, that we need to see that whether they are able to decompose or not, right? So few things, few species we have to emphasize upon, which are continuously in the news, or are threatened, or have been asked in the PYQs. From those point of view, this becomes important, this biotic factor. Okay, so this is nothing but the ecosystem. Further, if we see the functional units of ecosystem, what are the functionality? So write down this functionality, functional units of ecosystem. First is this productivity, that how productive is the ecosystem, how much productive is the ecosystem. So more biodiversity is there, more productivity is there, more number of organisms are there, more productivity is there. For example, I think we have discussed this, that have we discussed this Kempa fund in one or the other context? I think I might have discussed this, that if suppose deforestation is going to happen, right? Suppose, let's say, always this person is in news, so let's take him as an example, Adani. let's say Adani is going to build a solar power plant. Now there are two options for Adani. Either he can build this solar power plant in Andaman, or he can build this in Ladakh. Two options are there, right? And he can build wherever he wants. We know this. Where do you think he will have to pay more as far as Campa fund is concerned? Ladakh or Andaman? Why? How many for Ladakh? One? Only one? How many for Andaman? Rest of you? Those who are in between, they feel that Adani should not be able to build, at least in this ecologically. In Andaman also there is a possibility.
Sir, but
No, it is not. Only thing is we hardly get any news. That is the problem. I am telling you, if news is not coming related to Manipur, it doesn't mean that nothing is happening there. Right? So this is the scenario. If you see Campa fund is compensatory afforestation management fund, right? Afforestation has to be done. Afforestation has to be done on the basis of net ecological value, NEV. And net ecological value is determined on the basis of how huge is the biodiversity. And where do you think the biodiversity will be more? In Andaman, right? The biodiversity is huge in those areas where in the tropical region, mostly in the equatorial region, right? And we have seen the reasons as well, that why biodiversity is more. Why? Because the productivity is more. Biomass production, the rate of biomass production is more. So one of the function of ecosystem is productivity. More biodiversity, more ecological biomass production can happen. We will talk about this biomass pyramid and energy pyramid. Second thing is, so first thing is productivity. You should write only the pointers, the productivity, the functional unit. Second is energy flow, right? Now this energy flow becomes very, very important. This energy flow also we have read in our schools, the different trophic levels, right? You all might remember one thing, that energy flow is always unidirectional, that it goes on decreasing from level to level, and there is usually a energy pyramid of 4 to 5 species, because beyond that hardly any energy is there. Why? Why you consume food? For the sake of energy. Only nowadays we think about that we should have food, we should have less energy, low calorific value should be there, because we want to consume low calories, because we have already consumed a lot of calories, right? That's why low caloric diets are there. Otherwise, naturally, if we say, we consume food because of calories. These calories determine the energy flow. Now let's say 100 units of, there is a rule for this. We'll talk about this rule again. There is a rule known as Lindman's 10% law. Lindman's rule of 10% or Lindman's 10% law. Now what is this? That let's say 1 lakh unit of insolation is coming into the earth. Okay. How much do you think will be absorbed by the primary producers? As far as primary producers are what? Autotrophs. These autotrophs make their own food. How they make their own food? On the basis of this insolation, right? So how much do you think they will absorb out of this 1 lakh unit? Only 1%, 1 to 2% they absorb. Okay. And from here, After they will absorb 1%. So 1% of 1 lakh is, yes, this is CSAT. 1% of 1 lakh, 10,000, right? Or 1,000. Good. CSAT is good. Okay, so 1,000 will be there. Now, out of this 1,000, this is the energy that is being consumed by the autotrophs to make the food. Now, let's say this is nothing but the grass. Primary producer is grass. So, grass-based food chain will start. Now, this grass will be consumed by rabbit, deer, humans. There is a possibility of humans as well, because we are also consuming grass such that we can have less calories. So what will happen? Let's say rabbit is consuming this. Okay, this grass. How much energy will rabbit get out of this? Out of this 1,000 unit? Yes? Only 10%. 10% will move in the next phase. Right? If this rabbit is consumed by, let's say, who eats rabbit? Apart from humans? Which organisms? Let's say jackal. Okay. Jackal is consuming this. So how much was 10% of 1,000? 100 unit, right? So 100 unit will be absorbed. Rest 900 unit will be lost. Where will it be lost? Where would this 90% go? Why only 10% will be absorbed? 90% will go to, or this 10% will be restored. Where will 90% be lost? Because of heat and movement. Generation of heat is going to happen. Movement of rabbit will happen. Why? And that's how this energy will be lost. Right? 100 unit. Again, this jackal will eat this rabbit. Only 10% will be absorbed. Rest will be lost for heat and movement. 10 unit. Now, suppose some organism eats jackal, kills jackal, let's say lion, apex predator, right? Then only 1 unit he will get. After lion, nothing will be left. So that's why usually the food chain, the energy flow is for 4 to 5 organisms. This is Lindman's rule. This is the functionality of an ecosystem, the energy flow, the trophic level. So we will discuss this further, but here you should write the energy flow is the second aspect. Third aspect is decomposition, breakdown of dead material. Now this can happen, this can be done by the scavenger species as well. This can be done by the decomposers like earthworms as well, right? So these are nothing but wherever breakdown is happening, this decomposer species will be there, right? So this is also a functional role of the ecosystem, functional unit of the ecosystem. And fourth most important is nutrient cycling. And we know that without nutrient cycling, one of the most important sector, the primary sector, agriculture sector, that cannot happen. The biosphere cannot survive if phosphorus is not being restored. If respiration also leads to, that is nothing but the heat only, right? That is nothing but leading to heat only. Because of that also energy will be lost. So whatever this thing we are seeing, phosphorus cycle, nitrogen cycle, sulfur cycle, water cycle, these carbon cycle, one of the most important is carbon cycle. All these biogeochemical cycles are nothing but the nutrient cycling functionality of the ecosystem, and this is very, very important. Again, their cycling is very, very important. Otherwise, what will happen? There will be lack of micronutrients, and because of which there is a possibility of the loss of ecosystem, right? So functionality is important. Whenever we say that there is deterioration of a particular type of soil, why we say this? It can happen either because there is no decomposer available, or because of the loss of nutrients, right? And whenever loss of nutrients happen, what do we do? When we have to do the agriculture, we add fertilizers, right? So fertilization becomes important. That's why nutrient cycling becomes important. So that is the scenario. Now write the definition of biome. And we have seen all types of biome. I think we have seen terrestrial biome and different types of terrestrial biome. We have seen the desert biome, we have seen the evergreen forest, temperate forest, forest type of biome, then parkland, savanna type of system. When different types of climatic regions we were not looking at nothing but the biome. So a particular type of climatic climatic scenario is there which can lead to a particular area on the basis of which a functionality can be defined. That will be termed as biome. So write down biome refers to a large geographical region characterized by a particular set of climatic conditions, plant and animal life. Climatic conditions, plant and animal life. So there is a second sentence. There is a unique characteristic. This uniqueness is important in case of biome. Unique characteristic in a particular biome. Okay. Again, if you take an example, there is one desert biome. What climatic conditions will be there in desert? Yes. Aridness will be there, right? Aridity will be there. So one thing is this. In terms of temperature, usually high temperature. If it is hot desert, let's say it is hot desert, right? So temperature can reach more than 50 degrees Celsius. Rainfall, scanty. So because of this, what will happen to the vegetation? Type of vegetation? Xerophytes, right? Because of which, what will happen? There will be less fauna, right? If we see the vegetation, if vegetation is less, faunal diversity will be less, right? So faunal diversity will also be less. Similarly, if we see the cold desert scenario, the polar region, cold desert or polar region, here also what is there? Aridity is there, but aridity is there in both this and this condition, right? Temperature is in cold desert region, the temperature usually is minus 20 degrees Celsius. Now because of this, precipitation or rainfall, whatever things you see, rainfall will happen, precipitation will happen, can happen, but in the form of snowfall. But it will also not be huge, it will be scanty only. Why? Because we are seeing the arid condition here, right? Humidity is also less. Vegetation, if you see, mosses, lichens, this type of vegetation, the indicator species can be found. And because of this, again, fauna, if you see, it will be less. But don't you think the fauna of here and fauna of here will be different? Hot desert, aridity is there, but adaptation can lead to species like camel. If you bring camel to polar region, they will say, what is our job here, right? So here we will find polar bear. And if you see those who have dogs at their home, right, they might understand. And those who have husky in India, how many of you have husky? You know, husky is a Siberian dog species. Should be kept in cold region, cooler region. People in Delhi have husky. They bring them out in the park, right? In my room also there is a dog, right? He's like us only, part Indian, part lab is there, right? So he can survive in any condition. But if you see husky, you have to keep them in very cold, AC is required for them, right? Otherwise you cannot take out. Same is the case with polar bear, because they have been adapted to a particular location, right? So these things determine that which type of species can survive in which type of region, and this determines the nature of biome, the uniqueness that is there, the unique functionality that is there. On this basis we can determine the biome. So that's why write an example of types of biome. Grassland can be type of biome, uniqueness is there. Temperate or tropical forest can be a type of biome. Desert, hot desert can be a type of biome. Polar region can be a type of biome, right? So all these are nothing but the biome, where what we are seeing, this climatic condition is a dominant factor. Climatic condition is a dominant factor, which is a determining factor basically, along with the topography, right? For example, and we have seen this in geography, that if suppose even in equatorial region, if there is high altitude, what will happen? There will be less temperature. Precipitation will be in the form of snow. In Kilimanjaro we have seen, right? That is situated in the equator, but 5,000 meters high, there is going to be a snow there. Biodiversity will decrease, and this is the biome pyramid related to biodiversity. As we move towards the polar region, the biodiversity goes on decreasing. So you can draw a diagram like this, that as far as biodiversity is concerned, it goes on decreasing towards the poles. So if towards the poles the biodiversity is going to decrease, biomass production is also going to decrease, right? So biomass production also declines towards the poles. We will further write about biomass production, but here also this kind of diagram you can draw. Decrease in biodiversity. Here it is huge, near tropical region. Okay. Then biosphere. For biosphere you have already drawn this interaction. Lithosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere interaction is happening where life is possible. So write about biosphere as well. It is a part of the earth where life can exist. Part of the earth where life can exist. And interaction between atmosphere, hydrosphere and lithosphere is termed as biosphere. Okay. So this is there as far as this biosphere is concerned. Now if you see from an organism point of view, we have to talk about this thing particularly, and this is very, very favorite area of UPSC, the difference between the habitat and the niche. Usually habitat is interchangeably used as home also, the home of different species, right? But in environmental terms we use this term habitat. How many of you are lawyer? Any lawyer? No? Because you understand this term niche. Have you heard of this term niche from professional perspective? Yes. Niche is basically the functional role that you play. How many of you are doctor? Any doctor? No doctor. Let's say MBBS doctor is there. Okay. Somebody has done MBBS. Once this MBBS doctor starts practicing, he will be termed as physician, general physician, right? But if he specializes in a particular course, then he will be termed as a specialist, like ophthalmologist, cardiologist, right? This can happen. So if suppose you have issue related to your eyesight, you will go towards ophthalmologist, right? You won't go to meet cardiologist. This particular functionality, this particular function, or this particular specialization will be termed as niche. Okay. Specialization or a specific role in an ecosystem which cannot be performed by any other species. So the thing with niche is it is such a function which only single species can have in a particular area. No two species can share one niche. Okay, such is the scenario. But two species can share one habitat. This habitat or particular, let's say habitat, if you say, let's say wildlife sanctuary. So in wildlife sanctuary, such scenario cannot happen that lion only will live. Lions cannot say that we will only live in Gir National Park. All deer will be happy if lions will say this, right? That okay, you only live. We don't want to be here. In habitat, a deer, a lion, both the prey and predator, both can live. But whenever you say ecological niche, then we say that what is role of lion in that particular habitat is different from the role of deer in that particular habitat. So lion's niche will be different from deer's niche. Their reliance on resources will be different. Deer will rely on grasses. Lions will rely on deers. Right? So the functionality is changing, and a slight change in functionality will lead to this. Okay. Now you will say, okay, then what about tiger? If suppose tiger is also there in Gir National Park, let's say, then you will say both lions and tigers are the apex predator. Both have similar role. Both are relying on this. So do you think the role of the ecological niche is shared? No. It again depends that which species has which type of role. For example, usually if you see in case of lion, the pride of lion, the group of lion that is there, the female are the predators. It is the usual scenario. Okay, the female are the predators. They usually lead the pack as far as hunting is concerned. In case of tiger, individuality can also be seen. In case of lion, they usually lives in pride. They usually lives in group. Family kind of bonding can be seen. In case of tiger, it is slightly missing, right? And if you see the tiger of Karnataka and tiger of Bengal, functionality will differ. Tiger of Bengal likes fishes. They do the swimming. Bengal tiger particularly, if you see, their specific scenario is, their specific role is, they like fishing. They can swim for hours. Such as they are very good swimmers. Okay. So these things determine that which kind of niche is there as far as a particular species is there. Okay. So you should always know the difference between habitat and niche. So write down about habitat. Habitat is the place. Habitat is the place where an organism lives. And this habitat includes the living, non-living organisms and their dependency on the environment, their surrounding environment. Everything will be termed as habitat. Okay. But if you compare it with niche, write about niche. Niche refers to the unique role or position of a species, unique role or position of a species within an ecosystem, including the physical and biological conditions, it requires to survive, and not only survive, to reproduce as well. This is one of the most important function, reproduction. We will talk about the functional role of various species. For example, there can be eco-species, right? And on these eco-species, if you see, suppose there is 2 bear, we'll talk about them. There is one, I think the example might be here only. Let me check. Yes. Let's say there are 2 bears. One is polar bear, another is grizzly bear. Polar bear we already know, right? Polar bear is usually white in color, huge body is there, short ears are there, short limbs are there. Why short ears and short limbs are there when such a huge body is there? Why furry coat is there? Because short ear is there such that the heat cannot escape. Furry coat is there such that they can keep the heat in their body. Short limbs are there such that less movement should happen, loss of heat should be less, because they have to save the heat in the, so this is an adaptation, right? Similarly, grizzly bear, if you see, grizzly bear also is similar, but comparatively its limbs are comparatively larger. They are found in the temperate belt, in the boreal forest. Now both are different species adapted to different kind of conditions, but let's say both do the mating and there is a offspring of these species. The offspring of these 2 species will be termed as eco-species, mix of both the breeds, right? Now this eco-species will only be termed as eco-species if it can further reproduce. If suppose an offspring is born but that cannot reproduce, then that offspring would not be considered as eco-species. For example, have you heard about liger? Liger species, the offspring of lion and tiger is termed as liger. If you see the images of liger, now until and unless this liger can further reproduce, it will not be considered as eco-species. If it can reproduce, it will be termed as eco-species, right? This functionality is important in terms of niche. So always remember this, that niche is nothing but the functional space. Here only you can write it is a functional space of a community, of an organism, functional space of an organism. The functionality becomes important. And as far as habitat is concerned, habitat is the physical space. Habitat is the physical space. Okay. Now what will happen if 2 species are fighting for the same niche? What will happen? Suppose all of you are fighting for rank 1. Is there any possibility that all of you might get rank 1? In UPSC there is a possibility. 2%, 3%, 4% can get same marks and can get 1 rank, right? But in case of environment, one particular species will have 1 rank, and then there is going to be a competition among species, and competition is a type of interaction, biotic interaction, that we have to talk about. 6-7 types of interaction. If we see, competition is going to happen, and in case of competition, both the species will get negatively impacted and one will vanish. So if 2 species are fighting for ecological niche, only one will survive and thrive in future. Okay, there is going to be a competitive niche. So niche can further be subdivided. Habitat niche is there, trophic niche is there, fundamental niche is there, realized niche is there. Realized niche is basically this type is dependent upon the functionality of that particular organism, that whether it is dependent upon the habitat, whether it is dependent upon the energy level, whether it is dependent upon the fundamental level or realized level. Realized level is nothing but when competition is happening, one will win. That particular species who will win and will determine the functionality of that ecosystem will be termed as realized niche. Okay, so you should always remember that for a moment there can be two species who are competing for a particular niche, and then we know the Darwin's principle, survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest will lead to the species, the niche of that particular species. So write down, if two organisms if two organisms have the same niche, then on the basis of competitive exclusion principle, which is also termed as, in bracket you can write Gauss law. Competitive exclusion principle is termed as Gauss law. One species will survive in bracket realized niche. Realized niche. Okay. So this is going to happen. For a brief moment, overlap can be seen, but nothing will happen. There will be competitive exclusion will happen. Some suggest that there can be a possibility of niche overlap, resource partitioning also, but always remember, whenever it is niche, only one species can have a particular niche. Okay, always remember this thing, that there can be no exception in case of niche. Otherwise, it will be termed as habitat. Habitat can be shared, physical space can be shared, the role cannot be shared. For example, SP of a district, particular role is there, right? As far as superintendent of police of a district is concerned. Now you will say, sir, there can be multiple SPs. Both SPs are species, part of same species in terms of job, right? In terms of job profile, they have same role, same functionality. And a role of an SP cannot be overlooked by DM, right? So this is the scenario. No. Both biotic and abiotic components. When it is ecosystem, Gaurav, it is both biotic and abiotic components, because imagine if there is no air, right? Ecosystem is not going to survive. Abiotic components, particularly those climatic and edaphic factors, both are required. So it is an interaction of multiple things, biotic, abiotic, and its functionality. Even if all the factors are there, then also if it is not functional, for example, we often used to talk about AI, right? That AI is not going to overlook humans, or is not going to replace humans. Yesterday only this video became viral, right, from China, and a robotic marathon was there. 10-15 robots, they ran in one marathon, and there was a meme what humans were saying, right, that we cannot replace it. 10 years back there was a question, 10 or 7 years back, from science and tech point of view in UPSC, that, and simple kind of question, AI, when AI was not common. I think this was a question from 2017-18. You should start looking at the PYQs. This question was that whether AI can write songs, can write stories, can generate songs, and at that time we marked, yes, AI can do all these things. UPSC's answer key said, no, AI cannot generate song. And you can see nowadays, AI can generate even movie, AI can generate anything nowadays, right? You just have to give command. It can generate song on their own, right? So this is the role. One cannot know what outcomes can be there. So whenever it comes to possibility in terms of science and tech and environment question, there is no end to possibility. Anything is possible. So whenever this kind of statement is there that in future 100% AI cannot do this, you cannot say whether it can do this, because we cannot determine what possibility is there as far as functionality is concerned. And we also know that Hollywood is thinking in this direction. Avengers, if you see Age of Ultron, right? In Age of Ultron, what happened? These robots got their own soul. Whenever we say, no, we humans will always be different from the robots because we have soul, right? And if no soul is there, our functionality is lost. Now, once people will, or scientists will know in future that how souls can be generated, don't you think they will give life to the robots as well? And then you will see this is too futuristic. This is never ever possible. We don't know after 2 generations what is going to happen, right? As far as the development is concerned. So cognitive ability can be developed among these. This is the scenario. Further, let's see further different things. Now, what is ecotone in terms of habitat and niche only? If you see, let's say there are 2 types of biome. Okay, one is terrestrial biome, another is aquatic biome. So wherever interaction is happening in between these 2 types of biome, that interaction area will be termed as ecotone area. For example, in this case, the marshy land will be termed as ecotone. And as far as marshy land are concerned, we have seen different types of marshy land, right? You remember peatlands? You remember the example of peatlands in each continent? In which is the largest peatland in the world? Congo Basin, right? What declaration we have seen related to peatland, or which summit we have seen related to peatland? This was linked to previous year question, and we have marked this in mapping class. Which declaration was there? Anybody? You remember Braswell Declaration? Revise the notes. I wanted to check this, that whether you are revising or not, and I know for sure now that you haven't revised. Braswell Declaration related to 3 Basin Summit, right? This 3 Basin Summit was there in 2023. Different peatlands were discussed. Why focus is there on peatland? Because of this particular scenario, ecotone. That in ecotone, we know that there is edge effect. What is edge effect? Because of the edge effect, that one type of ecosystem, one type of biome is ending, another type of biome is going to start. So in ecotone region, usually there is more diversity in terms of species. More species diversity is there. Biomass production is more, right? So this is very, very rich region. That's why there is focus in this type of region. So marshy land is an example of this type of region. Wetland is an example of this type of region. Peatland is an example of this type of region. And this becomes mangrove forest is an example. Grassland is an example. That's why these kind of area we are focusing. For example, mangrove forest. We have discussed mangrove forest, right? Which state has the highest area as far as India is concerned related to mangrove forest? West Bengal, right? And which scheme we have seen related to mangrove forest? MISTI scheme is there, right? Mangrove Initiative for Shoreline Habitat and Tangible Income. So this again and again we are focusing hugely as far as this particular species is concerned, right? So this area, this ecotone, write down, ecotone is a zone of junction, between two or more diverse ecosystems, and these areas have richness in biodiversity, because of edge effect, because of edge effect. For example, if you see the examples of ecotone, write down mangroves, marshland, or marshy land, estuaries. In which coast we can find more estuaries? Western coast of India, right? Western coast of India, estuaries are there. And then grasslands, the transitional land between the forest and the desert, grasslands. And we have seen the nature of grasslands, that why they are important as far as ecosystem is concerned in India. We have seen from environment point of view, they are threatened. We have seen the bunny grassland. Bunny grassland is threatened, which will lead to the fight of survival of Kharai camel without bunny grassland. We have talked about one grassland in Ladakh. In which valley? Yes, again because of Adani that is happening. Because he is setting up a solar power plant there, because of which the pasture land of a particular goat species will be hampered. Which goat species is very, very prominent in Ladakh? Which produces pashmina? What is the name? Changthangi goat in Changthang Valley, right? So that becomes important. So that's why, and this was there in news in 2025. So that's why these grasslands are also very, very important. Grasslands are very, very important, right? So from this perspective, in the side margin, write all these things: Braswell Declaration, Three Basin Summit, Changthang Valley grassland, then Mishti scheme, write everything, because then you will be able to connect the context of these. That if we can see the context, we can see, is there any probability of question? If lots of context can be set, don't you think there will be more probability? Right? For example, in morning, which topic was there related to polity? Attorney General and Vice President, right? So all this union is going on, right? Don't you think that for the first time in last 12 years, if constitutional amendment has been lost by the government in the name of delimitation and women's reservation, it becomes important for the exam, from the examination point of view? If not prelims, 100% they will ask in mains. But from prelims perspective also, you should know the types of amendments that are there, different types. Similarly, if there is context to a particular topic, in environment also there is a particular context to this type of ecotone. That since they are one of the most productive region, and since these regions are one of the most impacted ones, we'll talk about the pollution, we'll talk about the human encroachment, that how this wetland area, particularly if we say, how this marshy land have been encroached by different municipal corporations, by different bodies, because of pollution, because of overdevelopment in this particular area, because of residential complexes being built, right? Why this kind of Braswell Declaration is happening? We have seen the case of Belem, right? I think I have told you this story that UNFCCC COP30 happened in Belem. The spot was finalized. First thing they did to conduct the event was deforestation. They cut the trees to conduct the COP30 for UNFCCC. Nothing but the hypocrisy. This is hypocrisy, right? So that's why all these things become important. So this area, write down, it is a zone of tension. Zone of tension. Why? Why zone of tension? Because resources are limited, diversity is more. That's why zone of tension. Also write down a well-developed ecotone. A well-developed ecotone. Well-developed ecotone contains some organisms which are entirely different from that of the adjoining communities. From that of the adjoining communities. Now from wetland perspective, if we say one wetland, let's say Loktak Lake only, okay, Loktak Lake, only floating wetland in the world, only floating vegetation in the world can be found in Loktak Lake, that is known as Fumdi. Only dancing deer, Sangai deer, can be found here. Nowhere else. Sangai deer is not found in Imphal Valley, in Chudachandpur district, in Senapati district, right? It is found only in the Loktak Lake region, right? In the Loktak Lake only. So what is happening here? In ecotone, only one particular species is found which is not found anywhere in the vicinity. This is the importance of ecotone. So you can refer this example as far as ecotone is concerned. Okay. The uniqueness that is there as far as this particular species is concerned. Then write about edge effect. Edge effect. It refers to the changes some comments are there in some other language which I cannot comprehend, but if possible, I can make it translate as well, right? Had there been an online class, I would have translated this as well. A group of community will be biome or ecosystem, right, Gaurav? That is there. Group of community can be biome, can be ecosystem. It again depend upon the type of climatic factors that is there, right? If a particular type of climatic factor is there, then that would be considered as a biome. For example, a desert biome is there, a polar biome is there, right? Terrestrial ecosystem biome is there, a terrestrial forest biome is there. Okay. Okay. No issues. And while class, you should not talk among yourselves. You should watch here and make notes. Okay. So let's write further. Edge effect. Edge effect, have you written? Edge effect. It refers to the changes in population or community structure. Or community structure. Okay. Population or community structure that occur at the boundary of two habitats. Occur at the boundary of two habitats. Species adapted to survive in edge effect areas are called ecotypes. Ecotypes. So here you can write example. Example can be polar bear, grizzly bear. For example, the common bear species that we find in India is, which type of bear do we find? How many of you have seen Revenant, Leonardo DiCaprio's movie? Yes. Which type of bear was there in Revenant? Bear attack scene is very, very famous as far as that particular. That is the first movie for which Leonardo got the Oscar. Yeah, grizzly bear was there, right? So in India, we don't find this type of grizzly bear. This is found in Russia, Siberia region. In India, we have sloth bear. Again, one of the most violent bear species. Right? Sloth bear is found. So these are nothing but the ecotypes. Okay. Sloth bear, polar bear, grizzly bear. They are the types of they are the ecotypes. And when, write down further, if the two ecotypes mate, yes, sloth bear is found in India, correct? If two ecotypes mate and produce a fertile offspring, that will be termed as eco-species. That will be termed as eco-species. Eco-species. So if you see this camel example, again ecotype, right? Because Kharai camel can swim. Otherwise, they are known as the sheep of the desert. They can survive for long without water, for days for water, without water. The different species of camel, the Indian camel type, single humped. Then there can be Bactrian camel, double humped Bactrian camel can be there. So Kharai camel is another type. So that is an example of ecotype. So on the basis of a particular type of region, there can be adaptability which can determine the ecotype. Okay. So there is a type of local scenario, local conditions can shape this type of species, ecotype species, right? So this can also be there. Ecotype species can be there. Then let us talk about the trophic level. And as far as trophic level is concerned, this trophic level determines, whenever you see the trophic level, different types of species are there. We will talk about further as far as the species are concerned. But I would suggest for species, you should limit because it can be interchangeably used. Biome and ecosystem usually are interchangeably used. Okay. For example, in an ecosystem, we talk about the particular environment that biotic and abiotic components are interacting and influenced by the environment and the events. Those environment and events are nothing but dependence upon the biome. So in an ecosystem, two different biomes can lie in a particular area. For example, if I talk about the arid ecosystem. Now arid means that there is a possibility of transitional biome as well. Because of aridity, there can be grassland. But we know that because of high aridity, there can be desert. So if transition is there, there can be biome. Look, the difference in case of usually we can call a group of biome as ecosystem, usually, but mostly it is interchangeable. Why? In case of political boundaries, we have fixed boundaries. In case of environment, we do not have fixed boundaries. Although we try to create the boundaries as far as the protected area network is concerned, but otherwise there is no fixed boundary. In general, there is no fixed boundary. For example, if we talk about Royal Manas and Manas National Park, you know where is this Royal Manas and Manas National Park? Manas National Park is in Assam. Royal Manas is in Bhutan. But the tiger species that is there in Manas National Park, They don't know whether they are in Assam or in Bhutan. This political boundary is for us, right? So that's why in case of ecosystem and biome, we hardly consider the boundary. But this will become important in case of environmental legislation, right? There we will further talk about this environmental legislation. We'll talk about the boundaries. So if we see the trophic level, then in trophic level scenario, one of the most important aspect is you should always remember that the energy flow is unidirectional. The energy flow happens from one direction only, and because of this energy flow, the pyramid is always upright. The energy pyramid is always upright. Okay. Whereas if we talk about the biomass pyramid can be upright, it can be inverted, it can be spindle shape as well, right? Different shapes can be there for biomass pyramid, but energy pyramid, always it will happen in particular direction, unidirectional, and usually the levels are 4 to 5 levels, and we have seen the reason behind this. The reason is Lindman's law, or Lindman's 10% rule. 10% rule is there, or Lindman's law is there. That is, only 10% of the energy goes from one level to another level. Rest is lost. Rest 90% is lost because of the heat and movement, right? So if 1% of the insolation is coming, the primary producer, the autotroph species, consumes only 1% of the incoming solar radiation, and on this basis it produces food. Autotroph species produces food. This food will be transferred in the next level, right? Only 10% will be transferred, leading to creation of primary producer. Primary producer will be there, and only 10% will get transferred. Further 10% will get transferred to the primary, here primary consumer will be there. This is primary consumer. Then further 10% secondary consumer. Further 10%, there can be different levels in different types of ecosystem. Secondary consumer, there can be then apex consumer, right? Yeah, we can call the largest subset is biosphere. We can call it as biosphere, the largest subset where this life is possible, that is biosphere. Okay. So if we say the apex producer is that after which transfer of energy is not possible, right? So we can call this as apex producer, because this will such low amount of energy will be there such that the natural functioning of the overall trophic level food chain will not be possible. If, for example, if you see this, scenario, here what is happening here? In this heterotrophic level, hardly any energy is left after this point. That if next organism is dependent, let's say there is another level after tertiary level, and this organism is only dependent upon this tertiary consumer from energy point of view, then what will happen? It will hardly get any energy from it, right? So this chain will not survive until unless there is energy to transfer for the survival. From the survival point of view, there is no trophic level. So that's why usually the trophic level is of 4 to 5 levels. usually 4 levels. There can be 5 level trophic level as well, depending upon which type of energy level we are talking about. So write down. We have already written about the functional units of an ecosystem. Write down trophic level. Trophic level. It is the representation of energy flow, one of the functionality of ecosystem. It is the representation of energy flow in an ecosystem. In an ecosystem, and it determines the position of the organism in position of an organism in food chain, food web, food chain or food web, right? Or ecological pyramids also. We can, on this basis only, we can draw this ecological pyramid, the trophic pyramid, biomass pyramid, right? So there can be further down as far as energy is concerned, because we are writing about the energy flow only. Autotrophs absorb 1% of the sunlight, 1% of the sunlight that reaches to them. 1% of the sunlight that reaches to them. Right? These autotrophs are, you know the autotroph scenario, right? Autotrophs are those which prepare their own food. So plants can be there in aquatic body. Yes, aquatic body, which organism will be termed as autotroph? Which absorb the sunlight? Yes, cyanobacteria, phytoplanktons, they can be considered as autotrophs, right? Because they produce their own energy by absorbing the sunlight. So phytoplanktons are their example, right? So write down like this, you can write terrestrial ecosystem, plants, grasses are example. Plants, trees, grasses, these are autotrophs. In aquatic ecosystem, phytoplanktons, algae. So one of the type of algae is cyanobacteria, right? Blue-green algae. So that is there. Microscopic algae is there, right? So these are the primary producers. So what they do is on the basis of photosynthesis. Usually, when I think climatology was taken by part was taken by Joseph, right? So if you see the nature of primordial atmosphere, the first atmosphere was formed in the earth because of how primary atmosphere was formed in the earth? Volcanic eruption, degassing. Volcanic degassing led to the formation of primordial atmosphere. How oxygen came into the atmosphere? By photosynthetic bacteria which did the anaerobic respiration. So it was the photosynthetic bacteria, right? This photosynthetic bacteria is nothing but the autotroph. This is absorbing the sunlight, photosynthesis is happening, because of which different elements are being released. For example, oxygen in the form of free air, in the form of basically O2, came because of photosynthetic bacteria. Otherwise also oxygen was there, but that was there in the form of oxides in the rock, right? Ferrous oxides was there, magnesium oxides was there, manganese oxide was there, but not the free oxygen. That came because of the photosynthetic bacteria. So what happens is, In case of phototrophs, or in case of usually the autotrophs, this carbon dioxide, water, sunlight interacts, releases sugar, glucose to produce energy, right? This is usually happen. This is what usually is. Ecotypes is nothing but, Gaurav, for a particular area, if a unique role is there, that will be termed as ecotype. So you can do this with example. You can remember this with example, that Tharai camel is found in a particular area, Sangai deer found in a particular area. So it has a unique role in that particular area. Polar bear found in a particular area, right? So they are ecotypes. They have adapted to that particular region. They have a unique role, a kind of ecological niche is there. That will be termed as ecotype. And when two ecotypes produce a fertile offspring, that will be termed as ecospecies. Okay. So these are nothing but the terms that are used to define the functionality of a particular region. Okay. So the role of primary producer is there. Then the level of secondary producer is there. And for this, I would suggest you to read the 4 chapters of biology NCERT. Why I am telling you is this: questions, if you see, directly comes from this region. Otherwise also multiple sources are there. But if you rely on this, probability is high that you might get the answers right. Limited source, more output, right? So this is there. Example we already know, autotrophs. Heterotroph example, write down heterotrophs or consumers. Consumers are those which are dependent, which cannot produce their own food. Consumers are those which cannot produce their own food in an ecosystem. Always remember this. This is happening in an ecosystem, right? Which cannot produce their own food. So this is there. Then different types of consumers can be there, and I would suggest that you should write the examples. Okay, as far as consumers are concerned, write down carnivores. We all know that consume the animals that are dependent upon the primary producers, right? So these are nothing but the secondary consumers. They are dependent upon primary consumers. Omnivores, write about omnivores. This organism can consume both plants and animals. They consume both plants and animals. So these are omnivores. Then scavengers. They feed on dead or decaying organism. Scavenging organisms. They feed on dead or decaying organisms. So as far as scavenger species is concerned, there can be multiple species like this, right? For example, if you talk about hyena, fox, these are nothing but the secondary consumers. Carnivore, jackal, carnivore, right? Wild boar, Tasmanian devil, stork, these are omnivore species. Vulture, if you say vulture particularly, is scavenger species, right? And these are all macroorganisms, macro consumers. Micro, if you see, wasp is there, fly is there. Flesh fly, usually if we see, flesh fly is small scavenging, micro scavenging species, right? Flesh fly. Ant, if you see, can be both omnivores, but again micro consumer, right? Yellow jacket, if you see, can be both omnivore and again micro consumer, right? So this type of examples you should remember. Write down. There can be micro decomposers. that breaks down the organic matter. And micro consumers, decomposers, are basically known as detritivores. Okay, the small ones, the micro consumers, micro scavengers are considered as detritivores. Macro are known as scavengers, right? So here you can write an example of earthworm. Earthworm will be considered as an example of detritivore. Okay, so here you can see the earthworm species. Snails are there, shrimp is there. Shrimp, write down in aquatic system, shrimp is an example of detritivore. Crab is an example of detritivore. And several times they have asked that in which kingdom crab, shrimp can fall. So from biology perspective, this also becomes important. Shrimp and crab, mollusks, whether they are annelids, these type of kingdoms also you should remember, right? So this is there. So this is the overall scenario. So food chain, unidirectional, one chain is there, that will be termed as food chain. Food web, complex system. One organism is eating another organism, complex system. For example, bird can eat grasses as well, primary consumers as well. The secondary consumers, some of the birds can eat secondary consumers as well. They can feed upon dead animals as well. So what is happening? They are dependent upon various species for the energy, right? That will be termed as food web. So it is nothing but a complex food chain will be termed as food web. Here the flow of energy is complex. Okay. Usually if adaptation is happening that is visible in an ecotone area, then that will be termed as a ecotype, which cannot be found in any other region. For example, if we see the example of polar bear, cannot be found in any other. Polar bear cannot be found in all the glaciers, right? Or in all the cooler region. So that's why polar bear is an example of ecotype, because it has adapted, it has seen a particular type of adaptability. Okay, so that will be termed as ecotype. Otherwise bear can be found in different regions. So in ecotone species different kind of bear can be found, but if it has a unique characteristic, that will be ecotype. So slight differences there. Through examples only you can see these differences. Okay, as far as ecotype species are concerned, they can be found in ecotone, but not in all ecotone. Okay, not in all ecotone. So for that you need to know the example. Okay, further so I think food web is not necessary. You understand the nature of food web. It is a complex system, multidimensional flow of energy is there as far as food web is concerned. And there have been multiple examples that there is collapse is going on as far as food web is concerned, and we know this kind of collapse. Is happening. Why? Because of the climate change, because of the human interference, right? So for example, if you see coral reef, one of the most biodiverse region, one of the highest biomass production region, that is collapsing because of climate change. So that's why it remains in news, the food web collapse that happens, right? So write about Lindman's 10% rule. Lindman's, Lindeman, Lindman's 10% rule. Down from one trophic level to another. Only 10% of the energy enters. Only 10% of the energy enters. Whereas 90% is lost. 90% is lost in case of heat and movement. 90% is lost in case of heat and movement, because of which food chains usually have 5 or less links. 5 or less links. Because energy lost is comparatively faster in case of food chain, right? Further write down about the energy pyramid. Write down. Have you written about energy pyramid? No? Write down. Energy pyramid. It is always upright. It is always upright. Always upright. As the flow of energy is unidirectional. Always upright as the flow of energy is unidirectional. Whereas, next sentence, whereas pyramids of biomass and numbers, pyramids of biomass and numbers can be upright, inverted, or spindle shaped. That is, can be of this shape. Okay, like this. Pyramid can also be there. Biomass pyramid and this number pyramid, right? And we know the reason. For example, usually the terrestrial, write down, usually the terrestrial biomass pyramid is upright. Usually the terrestrial biomass pyramid is upright, whereas the aquatic biomass pyramid is inverted. Aquatic biomass pyramid is inverted in usual scenario, okay? In usual scenario. And you can see this. The biomass pyramid, we know that the amount of biomass production that is happening, right? That is the biomass pyramid. So usually if you see the organisms, the primary organisms that can be found in a particular area, that will be termed as the weight of the organism that can be found in a particular area, that can be termed as the biomass. So the biomass of the primary producer, we have seen, depending upon the nature of the ecosystem or nature of the biome, or depending upon the biodiversity, where biodiversity will be more, biomass will be more, right? So if you see, the primary produces more, herbivore comparatively less, primary carnivore comparatively less, top carnivore comparatively less in terrestrial ecosystem. That's why the biomass pyramid is upright in terrestrial ecosystem. But in case of aquatic ecosystem, less producers, less phytoplankton and algae biomass can lead to more herbivore, which can lead to more biomass production of more carnivore. So that's why this biomass is more in case of aquatic ecosystem. Okay, so this becomes very, very important. Same is the case with number as well. if you see the number pyramid, it can be number of trees can be more than number of deers, which can be more than number of lion, upright pyramid. But here less number of trees can lead to more primary consumers, like more flies, more beetle nuts, more different type of more beetles are there, more secondary consumer, that is more birds are dependent upon this particular tree species. It can be inverted as well, right? But when we talk about energy, always energy flow is unidirectional. So you, from this angle, you should remember two things. One, the triangle, the pyramid of energy is always upright. Rest biomass and number can vary depending upon the different types of ecosystem. In terrestrial, there can be again different types of pyramids, that is upright, inverted, spindle shape. In aquatic, there can be different types of pyramids, upright, inverted and spindle shape, right? This thing you should remember. Then let us talk about this biomagnification and bioaccumulation scenario, and this becomes important. From this we will further talk in the pollution topic. Why? Because if we see, you know the difference between accumulation and magnification, bioaccumulation and biomagnification. Yes. What is happening in case of bioaccumulation is the pollutants that are getting accumulated in a single organism over its particular lifespan will be termed as bioaccumulation. That is, let's say the humans drinking every day, toxins are getting accumulated year on year, right? This will lead to accumulation, and that's why it is usually said, usually directive is given, smoking and drinking can lead to, are injurious to health. What is happening here? Accumulation is happening. But there is comparatively less probability because we are the apex predator, right? Humans are the apex predator. So we are not getting consumed. So this example will not fit here. Another example, let's see. Let's say there is one fish species. Okay. And this fish species is surviving in Japan off coast. And in last year we have seen one Japan off coast example, right? You remember the Japan off coast example? Yes, pesticides magnify. That 2011 Fukushima disaster happened, because of which the cooling water went to the sea, because of which there was radioactivity in the nearby region, because of which the fishing that is happening from that region has radioactive properties, right? And because of which China stopped buying the fish from Japan. So what has happened over the years? The fish of Japan off coast has accumulated these toxins. Now once huge amount of fish is getting consumed by, let's say, Chinese population. So let's say there is a person who is consuming one fish every day from Japan. Over a period of time, what will happen? The toxins, the uranium that is there, enriched uranium, will get into his system because of the multiple fish that he is eating. So it is getting magnified. Magnification of toxins will happen, right? And this is a biomagnification is a problem. Now biomagnification will generally not happen if the pollutant is soluble in water. It will happen, biomagnification will happen in those scenarios where it is fat soluble, where it is long lasting and where it is non-biodegradable. So different pollutants can lead to bioaccumulation, particularly in this scenario, because what will happen if it is water soluble? It will be flushed out from excreta, right? But if it is fat soluble, it will get accumulated. So that's why these kind of differences are there as far as bioaccumulation and biomagnification is concerned. So further write down. Bioaccumulation takes place in a single organism over the span of its life, resulting in higher concentration in older individuals. So this is an example of bioaccumulation. Over a period of time, this has accumulated, right? But in case of biomagnification, suppose we are using pesticides which are fat soluble, which are long lasting, which are non-biodegradable. These are being consumed by these pests. These pests are being consumed by smaller bird. This smaller bird is being consumed by this scavenger. What will happen? Even when this scavenger doesn't consume this pesticide containing grass, this will die. For example, you might have heard the case of avian botulism. You remember avian botulism? I think we have discussed this. This Indian gyps vulture, the scavenger species, they fed on the dead carcass of animals in Rajasthan region. And what happened? Their neck, which used to erect earlier, their neck hanged after consuming them, and they died because of suffocation. So what is happening because of that? Why they are dying? Because those dead carcasses used to have, those dead animals, they used to given painkiller during their lifetime. Painkiller like diclofenac, aceclofenac, ketoprofen, all those painkillers were given to them, which got accumulated, which was detrimental for these scavengers. That is an example of biomagnification. Okay. So write down biomagnification. Biomagnification takes place as chemicals transfer from lower trophic level to higher trophic levels, within a food web, resulting in higher concentration in apex predators, right? So here you can see long-lived, write down further, long-lived fat soluble and non-biodegradable pollutants, usually leads to biomagnification. For example, persistent organic pollutants, POPs. There is a convention related to this, persistent organic pollutants. Stockholm Convention is there, right? Which persists in the environment for longer period of time. There are different conventions related to mercury. For example, there is Minamata Convention is there, Basel Convention is there. Okay. Rotterdam Convention is there. Heavy metal related conventions are there. So this is biomagnification. Various example. For example, here you can see the image of the disease, Minamata disease, that happens as far as mercury pollution is concerned. So we will talk about this in organizations as well, different conventions, or in pollution as well. Okay. Then there is this biotic interaction. And I think we discussed this in geography also. But here it becomes important, and draw this table as far as different type of, or write like this. Let us write here. Draw a table like this. Biotic interaction. Species A, the impact on species A and species B. Okay. So major type of interaction, if we see, first interaction, if we see, there is let's say commensalism. And one species is getting positively impacted, another species is neutral. This will be termed as commensalism. And we have seen different climatic regions. Do you remember any climatic regions in the world where a prominent example is there of commensalism in type of forest? Yeah. Which type of example is there in tropical evergreen forest? What example can we see in tropical evergreen forest related to commensalism? Yeah, the climbers that are there, the creepers that are there, what is happening to epiphytes? They are climbing over the long trees. They are getting benefited. The long trees, they are hardly getting impacted. Neither positive nor negative impact is there, right? So that can be an example. Here you can write an example of an epiphyte. Right? This can be an example. Then there can be amensalism. One species get negatively impacted, another species is neutral. Can there be example from same forest as far as amensalism is concerned? That because of the species A, species B is getting negative impacted from tropical evergreen forest. What is happening in tropical evergreen forest? How is the density? Density is huge. Ground cover is such that sunlight cannot penetrate. High trees are there which are fighting among themselves to rise very high, but they cannot penetrate, the sunlight cannot penetrate, because of which what is happening? There is very less undergrowth. So one species hardly getting impacted, there is enough growth, another is negatively impacted, undergrowth is less. In same forest, grasses undergrowth, less grasses undergrowth in rainforest region. This is there. This is an example, right? Again of amensalism. Then there can be, and usually in case of competition, and I think we have already discussed this, in case of competition, For example, in case of when two species are fighting for one ecological niche, both will get negatively impacted. Although in case of competition, there will be one winner, one loser. There will be some winner. You will say that in case of competition, everybody wins. There is going to be one win, one lose, right? But in case of environment, both will lose something. So this is negative interaction. Although they will survive. Survival is not winning. Okay. So both will lose something, that will be competition. So you can write this niche fight or competitive niche can be an example of this competition. Then there can be mutualism. What is happening in case of mutualism? Both are positively impacted, right? Symbiotic relationship, again type of mutualism only, both positive impact is there. And the best example of symbiotic relationship we have is coral reefs. Symbiotic relationship of coral polyps and zooxanthellae algae, we have already seen that, right? So coral reefs can be an example of mutualism. Both species are positively impacted. Win-win situation for both these species. So this is their symbiotic relationship is there. Then there can be predation. And this is usually called as jungle law. That one will win, one will lose. One will gain, another will lose. Right? This predation. In case of predation, what happens? The predator is larger than the prey, always. So this we should remember. The general example, lion and deer, you can write. Predator is larger than the prey. Right? And in case of parasitism, if you see, similar scenario is there in case of parasitism also. One is positively impacted, another is negatively impacted. But here what is happening? Prey is larger than the predator or parasite. Prey is larger than the parasite. Prey is larger than the parasite. The organism which is getting negatively impacted is larger. Okay. So there can be multiple examples. There can be examples of ticks. There can be example of let's say tapeworm, right? That can also be an example which sucks on the bloods of. There can be example of leeches, right? These are the examples of parasites. So different parasite, and this again, I think 2-3 years back, Parasite won the Oscar. You should see, very nice movie, Korean drama is there, Parasite, right? So these are the biotic interactions. Again, if you see this PPT, lots of examples are there related to different types of parasites, ants and aphids, different types of interactions. For example, in case of mutualism, this ants and aphids example, pollination example is there, positive impact. Symbiosis relationship, we have already seen the corals and zooxanthellae bacteria, zooxanthellae algae, mycorrhizae example, the fungi example. And again, one topic which I should say is one of the most important if you have to prepare, fungi. This kingdom is such, UPSC has special interest in this kingdom, fungi. Whatever you can learn related to fungi, you should learn. Okay. Mushrooms are a type of fungi. They have asked multiple questions related to that. They have asked directly with relation to fungi. So once you will do the PYQs, you will understand this. Then cooperation is there, which is a type of mutualism only. Proto cooperation is there. It is type of that. Commensalism example is there. Barnacles and whales, epiphytes and trees. Right? Barnacles, have you seen the scenario of Barnacles? How many of you have seen Pirates of the Caribbean? Right? In Pirates of the Caribbean, usually if you see the pirates that used to live underwater, for example, in one of the part, that was the Revenge of Salazar. They used to live underground, underwater. Those used to grow the barnacles, the species that can grow on the skin. Similarly, this in the whales, the barnacles can be seen, which does not impact the whales, and they are getting the barnacles gets nutrients from the whale's skin. So that's how it is an example of commensalism. Predation, classic example. Whole animal planet is dependent upon this, right? Then parasitism, the examples, best example can be ticks and mammals, right? Dodder and plants can be an example of parasitism as well. That is there. Parasitic plant is there. Okay. Then competition, niche overlap usually is considered as the competition. We have already discussed that. So this is the biotic interaction that is there. Multiple examples are there. Further, one type of reaction, if you see this allelopathy, write down this allelopathy. This interaction is, this can be either commensalism, this can be either amensalism. Allelopathy is nothing but the release of chemicals by a plant which can influence the growth of a plant. It can either promote it or can either inhibit it. Okay, so write down allelopathy is a type of chemical produced by plant species which can either be harmful or beneficial to another plant species. Harmful or beneficial to another plant species. For example, if you see the species that is beneficial for the growth of the plant species that is beneficial for the growth of another plant species, we know that there are nitrogen fixation bacteria, right? Rhizobiums are there, Anabacter are there in pulses that can lead to nitrogen fixation and growth of another plant species. That can be an example. Example of amensalism, I think we have already discussed example of amensalism. No? One species is getting negatively impacted, another remains neutral. So for that we have inhibitive growth of the undergrowth in the tropical rainforest region can be an example of amensalism, inhibitive growth. Okay. Then harmful, if you see eucalyptus release chemicals such that the growth in the nearby region is restricted. Growth of grasses are restricted near eucalyptus region. So that is also an example of allelopathy, harmful. So both benefit or harmful can happen because of the release of chemical, right? So this is the allelopathy. Neutralism is nothing but no organism is getting impacted, no harmful effect is there, that is neutralism. So this is there. Further we will do tomorrow, I guess. Yeah. So tomorrow in the morning only the class is there. Polity, in the morning there is environment class only, right? Or polity is there? Polity is there. Sir was saying that there will be. Okay, let's see. I'll talk to Komal. Which class is there? Okay. If it is there in the morning itself, so 5 hours, I think the next 4 days, I think 5 hours each day class will be there related to environment only. Okay. So one thing that I should suggest you is PYQs. Start looking at the PYQs, start solving the PYQs. This is very, very important. Okay. The rest we will cover tomorrow.